So hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Traci Stein, as always. I'm so happy to be here with you. Today, we are going to learn from a mindfulness and self-compassion expert, Julie Potiker, on what we can do to feel better, do better, live better overall in trying times and in general. So Julie, welcome.
I'm so happy to be here. And life is just presenting these trying times every day.
It really is. And before we even get into that, I want to just do a little super brief bio because there's so much to you and I'm going to let you tell a lot of it. But basically, I mean, you're somebody who is multifaceted, understatement, but you're a former or
Recovering attorney.
Are you a recovering attorney? I wasn't really sure if I should say former attorney, recovering attorney.
Yeah. The only reason to even mention that I'm an attorney is that it helps other attorneys be okay to learn this stuff. And it shows you that perhaps I'm skeptical and perhaps I'm science-based.
Okay. So, Julie Potiker, a few quick things about you. You are a mindfulness expert. There's got to be something astrologically going on right now.
For sure.
Where it's, I'm tongue-tied. But you help others bring more peace and wellness into their lives through mindful methods for life, programs that you offer. Your new book is Snap: From Chaos to Calm. It's your second book, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay. You are a certified mindful self-compassion teacher, and you are founder of the Balanced Mind Meditation Center in La Jolla, California. You did your in-depth study of mindfulness after graduating from the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction program at the University of California, San Diego, where you're based out of. My in-laws are there. They love it. They love the weather. They always talk about how great it is. And your work has been featured really everywhere, every place from the Oprah Magazine, Costco Connection, AARP, AP News, NBC, CBS, Fox, the CW, many more places. And, today we're going to really talk about how we can implement your particular system or your strategy for moving from chaos to calm. And who doesn't need that, especially now? So, Julie, welcome.
Thanks so much. And implementing this strategy is actually as easy as a snap. I created Snap during COVID because I had been teaching other things that were methods to manage our nervous systems. And I realized I was adapting one of them, and I had been adapting it for years. Front loading the S, which is soothing and supportive touch. The brain science behind that is that you will get a release of endorphins and oxytocin to start calming down the cortisol and adrenaline, which is your fight, flight, freeze, right? When you feel bad. So, I'm like, oh my God, this needs an update. And then I came up with Snap. So I can take you through all the
that would be great.
letters whenever you want to do it now. And then we can get into how it's used. And I can, like California's on fire. I'm using Snap. I had to put my dog to sleep yesterday.
I'm so sorry.
I use Snap. Yeah, no. So I'm using it every day. And the people that are learning it from me are using it every day. I run into people at events and they're like, I'm using Snap. And I say, God, I'm so happy it's helping you.
Well, it's so important to have a variety of tools in our toolbox.
Yeah.
Because we tend to use the ones we feel most comfortable with and that we get the best results from. I love that you have incorporated soothing touch into your mindfulness work, and we'll define, Snap in a moment. But it's so underutilized.
It's
really
incredible.
Is. And we're born with that as a coping and calming mechanism.
Except that we think, Traci, like when we hear about it, that somebody else has to do that for us. We're born as babies having that, but it wasn't until relatively recently that they determined that when the adult picks up the infant, baby, soothing vocalizations and touch, that the baby has this letdown of endorphins and oxytocin, but also the adult. or whoever it is that's the big person. So the fact is that we can parent ourselves. To me, that's like everything that I don't have to say, oh my God, Traci, give me a hug. Okay, hold on for 12 seconds. I need to use you to calm me down. I can calm me down myself.
100%. And I have I'll have to be selective, but a few anecdotes about that down the road in our interview. But Julie, tell us again, the acronym is SNAP, S-N-A-P.
So the S, and when I teach it like in a dance kind of way so that people code it into their brain and then they don't need to use it again, but they'll remember it. So it's soothing touch, name the emotion, act, and praise. And then I'll break down each one for you. So the soothing touch we just touched on, that's the mammalian caregiver response, and it'll work. You need to practice on your body which feels the least awkward, basically. If you've never done it, it's going to feel weird. And so it might be hugging your arms. It might be just lovingly holding one hand in the other hand. I know people that their belly is the place that works for them. I know other people, it's just only their heart. And I have students that it's got to be cradling their face because that's what does it, right? So one of these places is going to do it. And you should pick a stealth one for like if you're at work in the boardroom or in a meeting with your boss or whatever, where you can soothe yourself without anybody else knowing. So that's your soothing touch, right?
And
so
I'm so glad you explained it for people who are just listening and may not see you doing this.
Right. Oh, sorry. Exactly. Okay. So that's your S. So that gets you on the way to calming down. And there's brain science, even more so than the oxytocin and endorphins that I want to explain. You want behind your forehead, your prefrontal cortex to come online for you to make a more skillful response. And the soothing touch takes a couple seconds. So it's sort of a hack. Not only are you getting the feel-good hormones, but you're waiting for this piece that you want, that you need to come online. And then N, name the emotion. Oh, you're giving yourself a couple more seconds. So you're thinking, I'm angry, I'm fearful, I'm saddened, I've got anxiety. Name it to tame it, right? So you're naming this thing. And if you have the capacity to try to get under that emotion to see what the softer emotion is under it, that's even better. You're taking more time, right? And then by then, your prefrontal cortex is probably online. And then the A, the act in SNAP is, what do I need to hear right now? And what do I need to do right now to change my channel? So what do I need to hear right now? You tell it to yourself. You say, Julie, sweetheart, if you can stomach calling yourself a term of endearment, it'll crack you up for like maybe the first year or two that you do it. And then it'll really be genuine. Julie, sweetheart, actually, look around. You're safe right now. Nobody's chasing you. You might have had a fearful thought or emotion or mental construction that came up. Allow it to blow through like clouds on the big sky of your mind. It's not who you are. It's going to pass. And then the second piece of A is your toolbox. What do I want to do right now to shift my mood? So, Traci, you will have already written a joy list. And you'll have so many things on there that are going to be different from my joy list. Mine is a bathtub, lighting candles, listening to Carole King radio on Pandora. I'm dating myself here, but that's okay.
I love Carole King.
So, calling specific friends, listening to specific music. If it's daytime and you're not freezing your butt off on the East Coast, getting outside in nature, which I would do in San Diego, listening to bird song. You might have 25 or 30 things on your joy list, and you just keep choosing one to do until you feel better, if you want to feel better, because you have a choice. And then the P is praise. And the P is really cool because it can be, good job, Julie, and thank you, Rick Hansen and Chris Germer and whoever my penultimate teachers are in my life and my mentors. Or it could be, thank God, thank Jesus, thank Buddha, thank Allah. It could be your deity of choice, which fold you into the gratitude practice. And as you know, the gratitude practice has been studied for 60 years and it helps in every single area of your life. So that's part of the toolkit also that I urge people to do when I'm teaching is to create a gratitude practice. And for people that hate doing it, I have an easy hack for that.
So tell us about the easy hack.
So I just take a journal and on the front of it, I write the question, what did I enjoy today? And what am I grateful for today? And I just answer those two questions. That's it.
Beautiful.
And you don't have to write a paragraph. It could be one word.
I love how simple that is because I think one of the things I've noticed, just as an observer of people and as a clinician, when people feel overwhelmed, super complicated things are inaccessible.
They won't do it.
It's hard to remember or it feels like, that's actually one of the things I've had, I've taught a lot of patients to do meditation and one of the things people say all the time is, well, when I'm feeling stressed, I can't do it. And then you hear, well, they're only doing it when they feel stressed. And I get it because they don't have a solid practice, right? But what you're describing with your SNAP acronym and your gratitude practice, it's simple and it's straightforward and they can remember it.
Right. Love taking things down to their essence and also combining them with everything else at its essence and making a little package that's easy because life is complicated and messy.
It is, especially now, and without going into detail, I think it's like the elephant in the room is that we are literally a country and metaphorically on fire.
Yep.
Except for Florida, which is getting dumped with snow. And I'm not laughing because it's funny because it really isn't.
It's outrageous.
And on social media, I've had these kind of back channel conversations with people who say, I feel so overwhelmed. I feel like my world is upside down and that doesn't really capture it. And, just there's so much societal anxiety. And so again, these tools are so important to have.
Can we talk about that for a minute, Traci? Because I don't know what you recommend, but I recommend not watching television.
Okay, not a bad recommendation.
So not watching the news. I mean, if you're binging a great show, oh my God, I just finished This Is Us, all 6 seasons. I was late to the party.
Wow.
I was late to the party on This Is Us. It was fantastic. So I recommend, so I teach this group every Wednesday morning on Zoom.
Okay.
And I've been teaching them since the lockdown. And they're all different ages, all women except for one guy. And a couple of them have been just tied up in knots about our democracy. And I'm not saying that I'm not concerned. Of course I am. But I don't think you should bathe in it if it's going to upset you and unbalance you and hurt you from being your best self. Like, I think look for the helpers, of course, be a helper if you can, continue to try to volunteer in any way, and don't watch the news and don't watch the clips. Like, don't have people screaming and yelling in your face that, our democracy is finished.
I think that's an option. And I think another option is using your body. You're talking about soothing touch, and that is absolutely one road into calm. And another is moving and discharging some of the distress, like getting up and literally moving and changing what your brain has to manage and focus on.
Yeah.
But another thing is honestly social media. And I said this in a recent podcast. It has such potential to be a way of connecting, but it really can be so incredibly toxic and demoralizing.
Yeah.
And deleting an app from your phone is not a bad thing.
Right.
At least for the time being.
So my January blog is all about a social media diet. Literally what you just said. And in my business Facebook, which is Mindful Methods for Life, it's just a happy place because I follow poets, nature photographers, other inspirational authors, So when I go there, my Facebook feed is just like this happy, nourishing, it's lovely. It's a lovely break. There's no doom to scroll in there. And in my personal Facebook, I have snoozed or deleted the people that are ranting and raving, the people on my side of the aisle that are ranting and raving, because I don't want to be activated like that. I don't want to. It's not good for me.
And I think knowing what works for you in the present time is really so smart. And maybe that's another good thing to tie into mindfulness, because I think what some people who are newer to mindfulness don't yet realize fully is that mindfulness is not only the practice in the moment, but it is changing your brain to refocus, recenter, calm down, and shift perspective. And in fact, I know you talk about that, the changes in the brain that persist even when you are not actively engaged in a formal meditative practice. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Love to. I love this topic. So this is experience-dependent neuroplasticity, which is largely the work of Rick Hansen. And it's about taking in a positive mental state, noticing you're having one or pulling one from your memory, enriching it and absorbing it so that what wires together fires together. You make a happy neural bridge in your brain. The more you do that, the negative ones get pruned out. So after, I don't know how long, I've been doing it for more than 10 years, I have a happy brain because I have planted these seeds and pulled these weeds all these years, which is why I teach. I'm a positive neuroplasticity teacher. I folded his, because I took the professional course. He's one of my mentors. I folded all that into the mindful self-compassion stuff, and I front load it because I want people to know when they're feeling good in a guided meditation that they're creating new neural networks. I want them to know that when they're doing a mindfulness in daily life activity that feels good, they're forming new neural networks. Because if you know you're specifically contributing to your brain health, you'll be more likely to do it. And then the proof is in the pudding, because you show up differently in
you feel better.
Humanity, in your family, with your loved ones, with your friends, at work. You just show up as this better version of yourself because you're more calm, you're more present. Then people mirror your neurons because they can't help it, because we're animals that do that with each other. And it just gets better.
Yeah. And just in plain language for people for whom neuroplasticity is, not a concept they're super facile with, I guess, people's inner critics. That voice changes. It calms down. And I know you've spoken about that, right? We become less hypercritical and self-conscious, less emotionally reactive, as you're describing, and it changes everything.
You become kinder to yourself. So even when you hear that inner critic, you can find your inner compassionate voice, and you can say to your inner critic, you're not so skillful. I get that you were trying to help me when I was a child, either do my best or not be embarrassed or whatever it is, as long as your primary early childhood caregiver wasn't actually abusive and neglectful. If you had the run-of-the-mill mom that just was doing the best she could and fell short, like most of us moms, myself included, you then get in touch with your compassionate voice and you can let your inner critic go. You can say, you know what, I've got this now.
It's so funny that we're talking about the inner critic, because I remember my opening kind of class or pitch for my class when I was teaching regularly was an inner critic and inner ally meditation. And I mean, people would be crying sometimes at the end of it, because so many of us struggle with that critical inner voice that does not want to let go. And what you're talking about is reshaping that voice.
You're actually realizing that there was a value there that was beneficial but not skillful.
I love that you phrased it that way.
And releasing it. I was teaching a class at a really fancy spa outside of San Diego, the Golden Door Spa. And I was teaching a 5-day class that I created. And the day that I did the exercises for the inner critic, it was a writing exercise. I had these 2 women that were just retired from, one of them was an emergency room physician, and the other one, I think, was a pediatric oncologist. And the one woman looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Boy, did you just do me a solid. I had no idea that all of the years that my father I thought was cold or distant or disapproving and didn't show up to my graduation ceremonies, I had no idea that it was about him and he was doing the best he could and it was about his fears and his limitations. Wow. I'm just going to let that go. Thank you so much." I mean, it was an amazing moment. She did all the work, but nobody guided her to this material. It's internal family systems. Nobody had ever guided her to this material. And it's in the mindful self-compassion curriculum, and it's in my first book. Like, I take people actually through in Life Falls Apart, But You Don't Have to. I take people through how to do it, and I show them mine, like verbatim, which was kind of vulnerable and crazy now that I think about it, but that's what I did at the time.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're tying the, mindful self-compassion into your work, both with people in your classes and in your books, because, I think sometimes, I've met plenty of people whose first concern, if they are not naturally self-compassionate, so many of us aren't, but their concern is that if I am self-compassionate, I will let myself off the hook for stuff and all hell will break loose, or I'll go off the rails or whatever it is. And sometimes I've found, and I don't know if you found this too, is that the way in is if they can't focus on the self, to say, well, imagine what would happen in your relationships and the stress it would take off of you if you could be more compassionate with other people, where your lens didn't see everything as just negative.
Right. Or comparing or whatever, which comes from such a deep vulnerability, right? And fear. So for people that are intellectually interested, all of those objections to self-compassion are on Kristin Neff's website with every single study that refutes it. So when I'm actually teaching a course, I give that link. I'm like, if you're curious and you think it's going to make you lazy or you're going to fall off your game and you'll never get promoted again, and, it's terrible to be too nice for yourself, all of that has actually been studied and refuted by science. Thank goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I know that you mentioned in your bio that you've studied with Kristin Neff, you studied with Christopher Germer. It's kind of like the all-stars of self-compassion work and research. And, I mean, that's super exciting,
When I think about Chris Germer, I just get all warm and cozy inside because he's the voice. Before they even had a teacher training, when they first came up with MSC, it was his voice on the recordings. And it was a particularly painful part of time in my life. And so I was like hanging on his voice every single day, doing all the practices. And then 3 years later, when they created a teacher training and I applied to it and I got in, it was the first teacher training. It was Chris and Kristin, and then also Steve Hickman and Michelle Becker, who are just phenomenal teachers. And they were, Steve Hickman was at the UCSD Center for Mindfulness. He isn't anymore, but he was like the president there. I forget what his job title was, director. And Michelle's still there. And now I'm on the UCSD teaching team.
Yeah, I saw that. Congratulations.
That's so crazy that all this, anyway, you never know what's going to happen in life. But those 4 were the teachers of the first teacher training. And when I walked up to Chris Germer, I just wanted to hug him because I said, you're the voice inside my head for the past 4 years. And here you are. And he was that much of a peach of a man, that he's such a mensch.
Let's talk about your journey, because I know that you mentioned that you were not always as skilled in the realm of mindfulness and self-compassion and SNAP. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, like how you got here.
I could do the executive summary, which is I was a train wreck. I thought I had a brain tumor. I went to a neurologist. He said, your brain is fine. This is after
Because what was happening? What was happening that
I had
made
the
you
wrong
think
words coming out of my mouth.
Okay.
I'd be thinking, I want to have a cappuccino, and I would say cappuccino. Or
it happens to all of us.
I would say maginal instead of magical, or bunky burby instead of topsy-turvy. And what was going on was I have 3 grown, fantastic children, but they weren't so fantastic going through puberty. And my parents were
Is anyone?
No, I don't think it. So anyway, I was really not doing well as a mom. And I was clinically depressed. And I was too stressed. And so the neurologist just happened to be a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, as was his wife. So that's what he recommended. And I didn't take it from them because it wasn't geographically easy. So I took it at UCSD Center for Mindfulness, where I'm now on the teaching team. And that started this whole thing. And it's only been 15 years, but I'm a different person.
I believe it. It's so transformative. And again, as you were alluding to before, it changes not only the function, but the structure of the brain. So this, seemingly simple set of techniques, it works. And, a lot of times, I'm sure you've heard this too, is that, a lot of people think like, if I take a pill or have a procedure, I can understand how that would change something in my body. And it's harder for people to imagine that a simple, straightforward technique that we are wired to be able to learn and use can cause such profound and positive change.
I agree with you. I wish that fMRI machines could be in everybody's house and that they were cheap and they could see then the change in their brain. They might not be able to understand it. Oh, look, there's more gray matter in an area where it helps. Oh, look, those telomeres aren't fraying as quickly. My brain's going to be healthier longer, and they could feel that they have less depression. They could feel they have less anxiety. They could feel like, wow, I'm staying on my exercise routine better than I ever have. Like there's all these things that it helps that if they pay attention, that they could notice, right? And their loved ones will tell them, wow, you really seem to be doing better.
That's so huge. And it's something that doesn't get enough airtime, I think, how our relationships can change for the better purely by our own insides changing for the better, our own, mental state, emotional state, ability to cope, to be resilient.
Exactly.
You mentioned something that I thought was very interesting. A story about not being into praying yourself.
Oh.
Totally understand that. But then feeling or realizing that mindfulness meditation is like a form of prayer. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure, I do. So it's loving kindness meditation. So I teach loving kindness meditation. Whenever I guide people in a meditation, it morphs somehow into wishing well for ourselves and then wishing well for others. And the reason I do that is because there was a scientific study that showed that when you wish well for others as well as yourself, it actually makes you more likely to help others. So it actually makes you more altruistic. And I think the bar needs to be raised for humanity, so you might as well get more bang for your buck. So if you're going to do a meditation, make sure it's some version of a loving kindness meditation, which if you're like on an app and you're looking for loving kindness, it could say compassion. It could say metta, which is compassion in the language of the Buddha in Pali. So on Balanced Mind with Julie Potiker, and there's more than 200 unique, because I'm not scripted, extemporaneous meditation, each one with a poem at the end and a chime. So if you want to fall asleep, don't use that. I have to make them without a chime. I just haven't gotten around to it for people that want to use it to go to sleep.
And this is an app of yours?
Yeah, it's an app and it's free anywhere you get your apps. Balanced Mind with Julie Potiker. But anyway, when you're wishing well for yourself and others, may you be safe. May you be free from suffering. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you find moments of ease in this crazy, messed up world that is filled with such beauty and such pain. If that isn't a prayer, what is? So I was this like secular person, universal being of the world. And one day I realized I was praying my heart out. And I was like, okay, I'm cool with prayer. As long as the prayer is words that resonate in my heart. So if I'm looking at a prayer book in whatever religion and I'm reading these words, that's why I didn't like prayer. It didn't mean anything to me. I'm so content oriented. But if you're creating these gorgeous wishes for healing and peace, that's absolutely a prayer.
It is. And it strikes me that, and I want to be thoughtful about how I say this, there are people who wear religion like a badge. This is my own personal take. Some people won't be happy with me saying that, but it's not untrue. And yet don't marry that with compassion for all beings. You can't be compassionate and not have compassion for everyone. It is very hard to have compassion for everyone. And it's okay for it to be a process, again, in my opinion.
This is such a hot button, especially this week, because that bishop was magnificent.
Yeah. And, it's just, you gotta, if you're gonna preach,
walk your talk, man.
I think our challenge is to embody as much of the divine as we can in this earthly form. And this is getting on a whole other direction, but, just, you're right. I haven't heard anybody say that metta is like a prayer, but it makes complete sense, right? Because when our compassion extends to everyone, we cannot be cruel.
Right.
We cannot be mean-spirited. We cannot be unkind. We cannot take joy in somebody else's suffering.
Right.
For the hit of the win, if our compassion extends to all, and
right.
It is a practice, and some days it is much harder than others. It's not as easy to be equally, feel equal kind of loving kindness for everybody all the time. I'm going to just say I'm speaking for myself.
Yeah. So you're speaking for a lot of people, because a lot of people feel the way you do. I certainly feel the way you do. And when you see the pain and cruelty and injustice coming out of somebody's mouth in the name of whatever their religion is, that is not representative of whatever their religion is, because all of the religions have at their ground level the same reverence for life and love. So, we all saw that this week. I don't know when your podcast is going to be, when this is going to go live, but that bishop was magnificent at the inauguration, and she is just getting vilified. And it's gross. It's
mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. I'll never understand how compassion can be, an expression of compassion can be so distorted. But, again, I think the challenge for all of us is to find compassion for ourselves, to find compassion for others, to function well when things aren't good,
Mm-hmm.
not only when they are. And I like that, again, I want to just summarize for people, SNAP, skillful touch.
Soothing touch.
Sorry. Soothing touch. Thank you.
Well, it is skillful, though.
It is. It's skillful and soothing.
Yeah.
And, the thing we are born with, naming it to taming it, naming the emotion, what do I need right now? Figuring that out and doing it. And like you said, having a list of things one can do to help self-regulate, whether it's taking a walk in the park or just taking a break or taking a breather or taking a bath or calling someone you love or whatever it is. And praise, being grateful to the divine or to yourself or to, other people or for other things in your life. And this seems very easy for anybody to implement with skill.
You have to practice it when you don't need it, so you'll have it when you do.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Julie, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have or anything else we should cover? I do want to let people know where they can order your book and find out more about you. And I'll put that in the show notes as well.
My website's like a library. If you go into mindfulmethodsforlife.com, you could spend hours in there because my books are in there, of course, and on Amazon. And if you go to like Barnes and Noble or whatever, and they don't have Snap on the shelf, they can order it.
Great.
Or your local bookstore as well. But in the website, if there's a research and reading tab, there's every book that has helped in this genre. So my teachers' books and people that even weren't my teachers and their websites, and there's newsletters in there. And then there's the blog that I write religiously once a month for the last 10 years. And the podcast. And then there's media. There's a media tab. And there's, I don't know how many hundreds of interviews, podcasts, print, television. So there's a lot. Like you could go down a Julie Potiker rabbit hole. You could spend a long time in there and it's free. I really want people to understand that they can do all this stuff and not have to spend any money and really help themselves.
That's wonderful. Julie, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. I really appreciate it. So very nice to meet you. And, best of luck with your book and your teaching.
Thank you. It's so nice to meet you too. I hope you stay warm somehow on the East Coast right now.
Yeah. It's not easy.
And I hope that San Diego doesn't burn up.
I will keep that in my positive intentions and meditations as well.
Thank you.
So this has been another episode of Unpacking Possibility. If you like the episode, please do remember to like, share, follow, leave me a comment, let me know what you think. And as always, until next time, be well.